the formal title of this webinar, which will take at least 6 hours, no? And after this, you will be having a certificate coming from SEAP and FAMI, SEAP being part owner and a partner of FAMI, and FAMI being a member of the Metrobank group of companies. No? So that's how we position FAMI. And FAMI, among other things, has this main objective of providing, investment and financial literacy programs to the education sector and to other sectors also. But FAMI was established as a history by SEAP officers then in 2004, and then 2005 it was actually incorporated, April 21, 2005, if I'm not mistaken. And the CAP president and CAP officers are part of the board of directors of FAMI. No? So in short, you own FAMI, you partially, because you're part of CAP. And one of the trust of FAMI, the main one, is to provide financial and investment literacy. And this is just one of them. So now, this is what is in store for you. So we'll be studying the school finance, the scope of school finance, the objectives and the functions of school finance. And we will touch on the Philippine Catholic School standards, no? But only the financial aspect of it. And here we will be reviewing financial statements, no? And after that, we will analyze the financial statements, no? This is financial analysis, no? They call it financial analysis, but what are being analyzed are actually financial statements, no? So even me, myself, no, as I read it, there are new ideas, new learnings whenever I look at these topics, no? It's really broad and profound, no? That just like any other aspect, like theology, philosophy, every time you read it, it's just like a Bible, no? You would really learn from it, no? As you proceed. And of course, these days, the cost of money, the cost of capital is crucial these days. Many should and would surely recourse to this, no? Avail of this. Then capital budgeting, project evaluation. Capital budgeting, is an activity of a school, no? Regarding big ticket items, big ticket decisions, no? Like, will you be putting up another school building? Will you be offering senior high school online or blended learning style? Or what are the projects? What are the corresponding budget? So you'll be doing projections. What are the cash flows? No, will the cash flows be enough in order for us to cover the cost of money? So that's how to evaluate these projects. No, so we will be using the tools in formally and scientifically evaluate projects. So the net present value, what is the internal rate of return, what is the payback period, no? And it's a process. Capital budgeting is a process. So we will be doing that. We'll be studying that in more detail later on. No? And then we will proceed to study working capital. So if capital budgeting is a long-term topic, working capital management and cash management is short-term in nature. So this is very much relevant, no? And yeah, important nowadays, because I'm sure you've done this, and I hope that you did it, no? In the past few months, the past 3 months, you did it because you have no choice but to take a look at your working capital, no? Your current assets, no? Do you still have enough current assets, current working capital in order to continue giving education, to continue fulfilling your mission and vision, no? And then as a topic under that, cash management. So you have to optimize, you have to really do a science to your cash management, no? In order to, let's say, not forego any opportunity of earning, no? Earning, and to do it scientifically and to establish controls in cash management. So we'll be studying that later on. I'm sure many of you will learn from that, no? And then, of course, this is strategic in nature, financial planning and forecasting. I hope that to a certain extent, your senior management, the school board, no, or the senior management committee, had already met and discussed this. They did planning already what to do the next school year. So just how many months to go, no? July, August, 2 months to go. 2 months to go, and you really have to decide and to really uh, take stock of what you have and do a little bit of forecasting whether what you are planning to do is viable financially or not. No, investment and portfolio management. I'm sure many CAP members are belonging to congregations. No, congregations, they support their educational institutions, the ones that they manage, they supervise. Many congregations are financially well off, no? And a few of them are financially hard up, no? And I'm sure many still have their cash, their funds, no? And the deployment of those funds there's a science to it also. So we'll be studying investment and portfolio management in that regard, no? And of course, this one is very relevant. We will be studying a bit of personal and household finance because as finance officers and administrators, I think it's your duty also to teach or to yeah, to cascade what you'll be learning under personal and household finance to your teachers and non-teaching personnel. For some and for many, I think, many teachers, they even exhausted their, they call it in personal finance, their emergency fund. Baka ubos na ubos na. O in the first place, maraming hindi nag-establish ng tinatawag nilang emergency fund. Emergency fund, no? So let me define this, no? The efficient and the effective way of managing financial resources in order to accomplish an organization's objectives is really, in general, financial management, no? So that's the generic definition. Efficient and effective way, no, of managing your financial resources, not just money, but about your fixed assets, your buildings, no, school buildings, spaces for rent, and even yeah, non-monetary assets. The brand of your school, the talents of your teachers, and so on. No, and school financial management or school finance refers to planning, organizing, directing, and controlling the financial activities of an educational institution's funds and resources. So it involves also applying the general management principles to the financial resources. No? So in college, we had this general management as a subject, no? And there are areas, no, core areas in management, no? So we do marketing management, we do financial management, so that's what we're doing right now, studying it. And we have strategic management. We also have human resource management, operations management, which is very important also these days. So, but I'm a bit biased here. So the most important of those is financial management. To me, no, I think so, because the other areas cannot function without money. Like how do you do marketing activities, promotion, advertisement without money? How can an operations manager do a project without funding, yes, without consulting the treasurer, the finance officer, no, the chief financial officer, no? So that one. So school finance, So these are the objectives of school finance. Now, in general, the the school should ensure regular and adequate supply of funds. No? Just like now, funds are needed. So treasurers, finance officers should be always on their toes, no? To source, to generate funds for the requirement. So it's an acid test. It's a test now the past few months, and even now and the near future. This will be a challenge, no? To ensure adequate returns to the school owners, no? The ones owning the school, no? Not necessarily the congregation, but some private families, private individuals running the schools, no? So adequate return should be given to them, which will depend upon the earning capacity, the value of the school, because the administrators, management were able to, able to generate more revenues and at the end generate more profit to the school owners and to meet the owners' expectations also. No? So are the activities aligned to their mission and vision and values? No? And then to ensure optimum fund and capital utilization. So once the funds are procured, they should be utilized in the maximum possible way at the very least cost. So I the first webinar that we did, one of the attendees said that they are able to borrow money to put up a school building, but this thing happened, no? The COVID-19 happened, and they're now thinking whether to push through with that project or not. But the money is with them already, so and it has a cost. So one of the principles is really once you get to receive the money, you really have to utilize it, maximize its possible use, because as time passes by, so you have to pay interest on that, no? So you really have to decide quickly, and with a basis scientifically, no? The other objective is to ensure safety of investments. So it's the lookout of finance officers, no, to ensure, to make sure that when they deploy the money, it falls on the hands of good institutions, persons, no. So safety. So in here you really have to weigh risk and return, no, risk and return. So we have the objectives. Now the scope. Gaano ba kalawak ang school finance? Ano bang nasasakupan niya? The activity of raising fund or capital is what we call financing decision. So financing decision is covered, and it's part and parcel of school finance. And an activity, a big activity being done by the officers handling money. So financing. So if you decide to open or to offer blended learning, fully online learning, how will you finance that project? No? So that's a question. Or if you have, let's say, payables, no, unpaid salaries, and it has accumulated to a substantial amount already, and you really have to pay that. How do you finance that? No? So financing decision, that's part of school finance. So when you do, investment decisions, including or involving fixed assets, like would you like to, offer that blended learning? Would you like to put up another building? Would you like to acquire, let's say, this private school folding up and selling its school? Would you like to acquire that? So those decisions, those are big ticket items involving capital budgeting. And when you do investment decisions regarding financial assets, paper assets, like bonds, stocks, mutual funds, UITFs, and the likes, you're doing investment and portfolio management. So financing decision, capital budgeting, investment portfolio management, and working capital management. So short-term in nature. So you take a look at your current assets, your cash, your receivables, your inventories, no? And other easily liquefiable assets. They are current assets. And how is it right now? Do you have enough to survive, to live, to continue with your mission and vision? No? And so with the scope, let me now zero in on the Philippine Catholic School standards. No? Meron din kasing standards, sinasabi rito, uh, na ito yung guide lang. Hindi naman siya mandatory, but a guide, no? An ideal school should be having this, no? These are the standards set up or set by your leadership, by your association, no? So sinasabi nila, dapat daw yung school should observe sound principles, no, and accountability in the management of school finance. That's self-explanatory. So as I said, we won't just be talking about, the incumbent problem of the pandemic, no, but this is just a review. So this is an activity that falls under the purview of, sharpening the saw, so to speak, no. As Dr. Stephen Covey said, at this point, if you have opportunity, you really have to study, learn, no. You sharpen the saw so that when pag nasabak na kayo, matalim na yung saw, no? Something like that, no? So we'll be studying topics, not necessarily addressing the current concerns, no? Baka in-expect nyo, tuturuan ko kayo paano ba magtayo ng fully online courses and so on. Hindi. But papasadahan natin lahat ng topics sa finance, no? For you to know, the topics that we'll be discussing here are the same topics that are being covered in a formal financial management course or some big schools, no? Big Catholic schools, no? The big ones that you know, color blue, green, no? Maroon, and gold, no? They're offering this, similar to this, they're offering continuing education program in finance, no? But generic. This one is precisely the same as that. So the ones being offered by those schools, they charge substantial amount, no? I saw it, no? And the same topics that we'll be studying here. Some of them are charging 100,000, no? Here, it's free. Di ba, in grid libre ito? Libre. So you just invest your time because we are just doing the advocacy that we promise to do, no? It's in our mission vision. You look at our mission and vision, precisely the number one is to offer financial investment literacy to our constituents and to our partners, no, CAP in particular. No? So your Philippine Catholic School standards also states that a check and balance system should be maintained and periodically reviewed. Are you doing this? No? Responsibilities for cash handling, recording, monitoring are held separately by an adequate number of qualified finance personnel. In the past, even before the COVID, no, we had cases, a few cases, no, of unpleasant events happening related to money. So we don't want that to happen. So we really have to establish this, check and balance. So yung Catholic School Standard, sinabi rin that the school has an approved and should have an approved budget that ensures sustainability of its mission over the long term. Departures from actual should be minimal. So at the outset, at the beginning of each school year, or even 5-year plan, 10-year plan, define na magkano ba ang budget? Magkano ba, and any departure or deviation from that should only be exceptional, minimal, no? And hindi palagi. Receivables are monitored. Are you monitoring your tuition fees receivable by this time? How much we're not able to collect, no, by your cashier, by your school. And receivables must be managed and kept to a minimum. Dito malalaman yung galing ng inyong finance team, finance department. So they're being paid, they receive their salaries, and this is their KRA, part of their key result areas. And other than that, all financial obligations are met on time, hindi porket COVID. Meron tayong excuse not to pay Meralco, not to pay the retirement contributions for our employees' retirement, no? So, importante sa kanila yon. Pag nag-retire sila, inaasahan nila yon. And we really have to address that, no? The school employs a combination of implementing, teka lang, meron natatabingan kasi yung aking yan. Cost reduction measures, engaging in varied and creative resource-generating activities in support of its mission. So, kailangan magaling din yung school, particularly yung finance department, to generate resources, especially these days. I think there's a reason. Why not, for example, if you have exhausted your current assets and still in the near future won't be able to receive money. So one of the things that I thought of is really why not go to your alumni, Why not generate, what do you call that, resources, money from, what do you call that, revenue activities, generating activities. Pag medyo balik na sa normal ng konti, even better, modified GCQ na tayo, and then pwede na sigurong you gather your alumni or you do yung mga revenue generating projects. And I'm sure you can approach foundations, you can approach, rich corporations, institutions, and you can exchange, for example, non-monetary service to them, like providing education to their employees and the like. So you know what I'm talking about. So ito yung mga fundraising activities, no? Dapat magaling din, very innovative, magaling mag-isip paano mga activities, fundraising, parents of rich children or rich parents of your students, no? Yung mga fundraising. I've been developing this, no? I should have presented this module. A group of Catholic school requested me to come up with this seminar on fundraising. I mentioned this, and it's around 80% done, but because of what happened, activities, hindi ko na ho matapos. But really there, no? I came up with an activity. It's a workshop wherein at the end, no? School personnel, the ones in charge of fundraising, will be able to systematize the fundraising activities so that at the end, the money generated would complement the money they generate from tuition fees, from other sources of income like rental income from the spaces that they rent out, the schools rent out, no? So financial statements are generated on time, submitted to authorities like DepEd, CHED, inside and outside the school, and are prudently made public, at least to the school stakeholders. So if your school is owned by private individuals or families, then the more so that you really have to be transparent. So make these financial statements available. And it's good for you to really master these financial statements, no? And that's one of the objectives of this webinar. So given its objectives and scope, no, here are the more specific functions of school finance, no? Very quickly now. You will notice also that some of the items are being repeated because that's really to emphasize, no, the importance, relevance of this. So the functions really actually also has a common denominator with the objectives and scope. So the specific functions of school finance is, one, the estimation of capital requirements. Diba? Financing decision yan. Sabi natin, no? A school finance manager has to make estimation of the capital requirements of the school. So depending on the expected costs and profits and future programs and policies. So the activity should be aligned with your policies, with your mission and vision. Estimations have to be made in an adequate manner, which increases the earning capacity of the school. So COVID, non-COVID period, you really have to do this, choosing the right sources of funding. So will you bite that LBP offer? In the first place, are your financial statements qualified in order to be, you know, lent, in order for LBP, Land Bank of the Philippines, lend you money? So additional school funds may be procured through loans. Issuance, some are do issuance of promissory notes, private loans or bonds. Some schools, a few of the schools in the Philippines and many abroad are actually resorting to this. So in the Philippines, a few of them are listed in the Philippine Stock Exchange, the likes of FEU, Central Escolar University, uh, mm, yung binibili minsan ng mga stock traders, yung iAcademy. Anong school ba yan? Yeah, iPeople. So those schools, they resorted to generate resources via making their school public. They listed their school in the Philippine stock market. So easier for them to generate revenues, no? And some of them would resort to even offering school bonds. I don't know if it's possible for you. But those listed companies, they cannot just generate revenues, money from stockholders, but they can offer school bonds, no, that are rated by rating agencies, no, listed and filed, registered with the SEC. But you don't have to do that formally, no. I mean, if you're not really that big as a school, you can go and resort to private loans, no, and the ones from rich individuals, institutions, and the banks. No? Some schools go public, as I said. Fundraising activities is one of the significant set of activities that you can think of, that you can consider, no, these days, no, because after all the stones are turned, no, still you have lack of, let's say, resources, financial resources to make your project roll. Then really fundraising is another activities. And I'm sure I'm not just talking about these things for schools that are financially challenged. No, I'm sure many of you here are not financially challenged. No, uh, if I can if I can only see the expression of your faces, I can see anything from here. I don't know if I'm talking and there are still people listening to me, because from my position right now in my room, I'm talking just by, I don't know, I can just see this, and I don't know if there are people listening, you know. But I presume that there are, ano, unless Ingrid sabihan mo lang ako kasi yung boses ko nawawala na rin, baka wala naman palang tao, no?
Sir,
Anyway,
meron po.
meron naman. Okay, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so are you still there? Are you still awake? Can you say yes? No. Hindi na lang. Kasi nga, one of the constraints, no, going online, going, you know, like this one, the activities, this is part of the new normal. CAP, they call it not just the new normal, the next normal will be this. Sabi nila, no? And it's entirely different, significantly different from the normal that we used to have, no? Even yung mga lola natin, hindi nila na-experience ito. The last one that happened, the pandemic, in 1918. Buhay pa ba yung mga lola ninyo? Wala na ho, kakaunti na. Ngayon lang ho ito na experience. Yung mga anak ko, sinabi ko, many years, generation from now, tell your children, your grandchildren, this happened. You're able to experience this once in a lifetime experience. This is once in a lifetime, no? Good for us if we're able to survive this. And I'm sure, no? At the rate we're going, I don't know, I'm not still very comfortable with what's happening, no? Remember, we don't know, we cannot see our enemy, no? And really, this one, the best thing to do is to to prevent this from coming to us. The virus, just follow the rules, no? Okay, so the third one, the third function is precisely the one that I mentioned, which is the scope also of school finance, investment and portfolio management. No? To a certain extent, and I'm sure you're expected, being the finance officer, the school administrator, you should know where to put your excess funds, your money, short-term money, you need it in the next few weeks, few months. Then, rather than it staying in savings account, there are still other investment outlets wherein you can earn better returns, no? So do you know that? If you have money, long-term money, to be used, let's say, for the construction of another building 3, 5 years, 10 years from now, or to put up a gym to make your school, a college, into a university, then you really have to build your fund, no? Little by little, and if you have already that funding, it should stay, no? While not in use, in a medium to long term, better yielding investment outlets, no? And that's falling under the purview of investment and portfolio management, which is one of the functions of a school finance officer. And this is another thing, very important this day, cash management. We'll be studying that, working capital and cash management. The financial controls, one of the standards in the Philippine Catholic School standards, financial control, the check and balance. So it should be in place, no? And that is part of the KRAs of the job description of your finance people, no? Particularly your finance person, the chief financial officer, no? Taking a look at first the basic of finance, and we cannot help but really study also accounting in the process. So let's review our financial statements, no? And the school's finance manager should, at the very minimum, be familiar with this, no? Financial statements. Please ask yourself, am I familiar with this? Do I still know this? No? And yeah, introspection, as I said, no? So I cite my sources, my personal experience, Wikipedia, textbooks, and so on, in order for me to craft this and organize this for school finance, no? So we know that every year, no, these days, you've been doing your financial report, and a big chunk of it, the main content is the financial statements, comprising of 4 statements. The balance sheet is the first one. I think you know this. A balance sheet provides a snapshot of your school's financial position or financial health. So at this point in time, let's say June 8, June 9, 2020, ano ba ang ating balance sheet position? Are we, do we have net worth that is positive or negative? Because a balance sheet, as I said, as of a particular date, let's say today, all of your assets, fixed assets, current assets, minus all of your liabilities, long-term liabilities, short-term liabilities, current liabilities, the difference between the two is your school's net worth. Is that net worth positive or negative? For corporations, if it is negative, the corporation would be bankrupt if liabilities are greater than the assets themselves, no? So you have to check that out. Now, so we'll be studying that by coming up with an illustration very quickly, no? So bear with me. For some, I don't know, many of you, I don't know, are experts in this already, but as I said earlier, every time I pass through this, I go through this, I learn something, no? Income statement. If a balance sheet is just like a camera, a snapshot, this is income statements just like a moving a video, no? Over a period of time, 1 year, 1 school year, I don't know, May 1 to April 30. May 1 of the given year up to April 30 of the following year. So it summarizes your school's revenues and expenses over a given period of time. So all of your revenues, income, no, whatever sources, deduct all the expenses, including salaries, utilities, interest paid, and so on and so forth, including depreciation. No? So we will discuss that later on. And then the third statement is the statement of cash flows. So this is very important, no? Because these days, no? What if, let's say, ayan, dumating na yung bill ni Meralco, meron ba kayong cash available to pay the accumulated electricity bill? O dumating na si Manila Water or yung local water provider ninyo dyan sa inyong province, no? So uh, you look at your companies, your school's position with regards to cash coming in and cash coming out, regardless of whether the source is from income or from loans, and the payables are paying your salaries, paying your interest, or paying your contractor in the construction of the building or school facilities. So, cash lang ang tinitingnan nun. Tinitingnan kung gaano cash rich or kaganda yung inyong eskwelahan in terms of being prepared when payables would crop up, no? And whether you are deficient in cash on a particular period. Now, statement of cash flow would normally run just like income statement over a period of 1 year, 1 school year. No? And then the last of the 4 statements is the statement of stockholders' equity or net worth, no? Sa, of course, hindi naman stockholders karamihan ng mga schools, no? Marami mga schools non-stock, non-profit, but we call it in generic term net worth. So this statement of stockholders' equity or net worth shows how much of the school's earnings were retained. So part of that, later on, when we look at the balance sheet statement, the stockholders' equity is in that portion, no? It shows how much the school's earnings were retained, so the retained earnings and the school's ownership. So, yung kongregasyon, magkano bang, kung ibebenta ba yung eskwelahan, ano bang net worth niya? Ano bang market value niya? If we decide, for example, to let go and fold up and realize whatever value the school has, no? Rather than you, let's say, nag-give up na, let's say, wag na, mahirap pa lang lumaban sa iba. But we decide to fold up, no? Then how much is your net worth, no? It's, I think, even if you're not doing that, I think at any point in time, as a finance person, you really have to know your net worth, your school net worth, even on a personal basis, no? As we will see later on in personal finance, no? So I don't know, what are the typical cash inflows and outflows in schools, no? Tuition fees is the major one. Interest income from your investment, fixed income instruments, no? Time deposit, mutual fund investment, unit investment, trust investment, and so on. Rental income. Some schools would rent out as free spaces to Jollibee, McDonald's, no? Or yung mga 7-Eleven or yung mga tindahan, no? Capital gains, if you invest or if you sold, let's say, one of your properties, then you generate capital gains. If you have stocks or mutual funds, you sold it, then the gain is capital gains, no? ESC, subsidies, GASPE, you know that, no? From PAYAC, from FAPE, from, I don't know, some of your schools are beneficiaries of that, no? Income from selling books and supplies. I think the book dealers are giving good offers to schools on this, and this is one good source of revenues for schools. Fundraising proceeds, no? I mentioned about that, no? One of you can identify one of your personnel in your school to be the champion of this, no? Fundraising, it can do a lot, no? Financially speaking. If you do it scientifically, then you will generate cash significantly. Significant enough, no, to cover what is lacking, no? The gap between what is required and what do you have, no, at present. Donations, of course, if you can have that. Other income, no? If you have canteens, no, concessionaires, no, dormitories, some schools have this, bookstores, school supplies. These are the possible revenues, outflows, expenses, salaries and wages, interest expenses on loans, utilities, no, meetings and representations, accreditation. Now I look at some of the items that some schools will be taking out from the tuition fees. Kasi, di ba, prior to COVID, ang daming ano eh, di ba, tuition fees, and then miscellaneous, ang daming charge doon. Hindi naman I'm not really telling just to expose this, no, but ganun talaga nun. Ako, I've been studying, I studied for so many decades, no, since I was a young boy, no. But palaging meron doon tuition fees, miscellaneous fees. Ang daming nakatuck in doon. And then, kung titignan ninyo yung sample na continuity plan ng mga diocese, some private schools, dun sa CAP proposed plan, andun marami silang i-retain, konti na lang i-retain nila, marami silang i-forgo, and marami silang idadagdag sa tuition. Primarily, the addition is in the area of providing additional instructional materials through or by offering blended learning services. Online, distance learning would entail cost. So sa tuition fees, hindi na natin alam kung mga babayaran ng mga estudyante mas mababa this time, this coming school year. Because many of the items will be taken out, a few of them will be retained, and much fewer will be added, like additional expenses for software licenses, subscription to this platform, no, like Canvas and Microsoft Teams, no, those are licenses. Now, as I said, we will be studying financial statements by looking at the case, no? Assets, the school then is worth, this is December 31, 2019, no? All of this, these 2 years ending. Remember, this is a snapshot as of a particular date, normally at the end of the school year, no? Let's say, April 30, 2019, April 30, 2018. And then, just like any other fixed asset, subject to depreciation. So, assuming the depreciation is straight, no, so 263 million of the 1.2 billion is depreciation. No? So, a big jump from 146 of last year. Therefore, if you deduct the fixed assets, the gross fixed assets, if you deduct the depreciation from the gross fixed assets, you have the net fixed assets. Now, your total assets is the sum of all current assets and net fixed assets. So, in the case of XYZ University, it's 2.866 billion. So, almost double of last year's 1.468 billion pesos, no? So, that's how to analyze your balance sheet, the asset side. So, let's look at the liabilities and equity or net worth side of the balance sheet. So remember, this is the first statement of the 4 financial statements. We are just in balance sheet. So we saw assets. We are now looking at liabilities and net worth. No? So what you will see in the liabilities and net worth is, of course, liabilities, the blue items there, and equity items are the red ones. No? So accounts payable, no, because it borrowed money, so amortization, interest payments, and so on. So jump from 145 million to 524 in 2019. Accounts payable. And then it's borrowed money using long-term and short-term instruments. So these are short-term instruments. It issued short-term notes, no? And therefore payables amounted to 636. From 200 million last year. Accruals, no, of interest and other accrued expenses 489 as a result of that expansion. Therefore, total current liabilities, those liabilities that have to be paid relatively earlier than long-term liabilities. So, no? So just like current assets, ito yung pang ano, yung pang tapat o yung katapat na dapat tapatan ng current assets. No? Later on, we will see the importance of asset liability matching. Important for a treasurer, for a finance person to always take a look at. No? So other than current assets, in the liabilities portion, you will also see there long-term liabilities. They call it long-term debt. In the case of XYZ University, it borrowed money. It borrowed money and has accumulated as of April 30, 2019, the total long-term debt is 723 million, which is a big jump from 323 million of last year. Now, as an owner or as a group of owners, the congregation, private families, or individual, the worth of XYZ University is just this one. The common stock, if it is a corporation, but the ownership, no, of let's say the school owned by private individuals, congregation, or families, no. So the families, the owners would look at the common stock, we call it, and the retained earnings. Now, actually, this retained earnings is an accumulation of retained earnings from the time the school started operation up to the end of 2019, which is the school year ending in or ending on April 30, 2019. So that's a comparison. Total equity, a reduction. So if I were the owner, so the value of the school went down from 663 to 492. So if we are to fold up the school, as I said, mentioned, this time, at this very point in time, April 30, 2019, this is the value of the school. If this is to be acquired by, let's say, another party, another school, they will take a look at this. This is really the true value, the book value of the school, the accounting value. Okay? So if you add the total liabilities and total equity or net worth, you will end up with this 2.866. Now, from our formula, we said that as assets minus liabilities equals net worth, or you can put it this way: assets equals total liabilities and net worth. So they are balanced, they are equal. So here, 2.866, total assets, the total liabilities and equity, 2.866. So it's balanced, no? That's why it's called balance sheet, no? Balance sheet, and this is just a snapshot as of a particular date, no? As of April 30, 2019, as of April 30, 2018. So normally, financial statements will be presented like that, 2 years, no? 2 years, para malaman nila ano nangyari. How is it this year compared to last year? So they call it sometimes horizontal analysis, vertical analysis, no? Okay, so as a whole, this is a balance sheet of XYZ University. Later on, I'll ask questions, no? So XYZ income statement. So this is the second statement of the financial statements, no? The 4 financial statements. The income statement. As I said, this is a moving camera, so to speak. All activities that happened, cash coming in, cash that went out during the whole year, the school year 2019 and 2018, no? So the tuition fees generated in 2019, 6 billion, up from 3 billion, 3.4 billion last year. But the cost of goods sold, remember, when you generated that, generic, they call it CGS. So when you receive those, what did it take you? What are the ingredients? In the case of a school, so the developmental expenses, you had consultants to come up with the instructional materials, and of course, you borrowed money, you provided buildings, no? So that's the cost of goods sold, no? So to speak, for a school, let's say you have other expenses, 519 million in 2019, The total operating cost, no, is therefore this one, 5.528 plus 0.519 billion, no? Billion is 6.047 billion. Remember, this is in thousands of pesos, no? So that's the one. So just like any other fixed assets, you have an expense, a non-cash expense called depreciation expense. For the whole year 2019, it amounted to 116 million. Now, if you have big assets, fixed assets, you really have to pay for and depreciate that, no, as an accounting rule, no. Remember last year in 2018 or the previous year, 8 lang, no? Explanation, lumaki yung fixed assets, no? Therefore, your EBIT net of interest before paying, no? 36 million. Am I still okay, no? Kasi merong internet connection message ako na-receive. Concern.
Yes, sir. Okay pa din po.
Okay pa rin naman. Meron kasi nag-blink na your internet connection is, anyway, so that one, no? So the EBIT, supposedly, gross earnings, no, in layman's terms, is negative kaagad, no? EBIT is negative, no? Kasi tuition minus all of this minus depreciation equals 130 million loss. 130 million losses. Previously, it was a positive profit, no? 190 million. It's a loss because of expansion and then the way they handle their finances, no? Then not only that, to make the situation worse, the school still needed to pay interest expenses for their loans, 136 million from the borrowings, no? And then therefore, after payment of interest, you have their earnings before payment of taxes, no? Now, I'm sure, and I know that schools in the Philippines are tax-free. Now, for purposes of illustration, and just to complete the lesson on income statement, let's assume that you are taxable, no? And anyway, madali lang naman, let's say there's a tax, let's say X% of the gross income. So it's 106, 40%, let's say 40%, 106. Therefore, you deduct that, you get 160.176 million pesos in losses. So this is the income statement. What's the bottom line? So yun yung tinatanong, ano bang bottom line natin this year? So tinatanong, anong net profit natin? In the case of the university, it's a net loss of 160 million. The previous year, it was a positive income of 87.9 million. So what have happened, no? Now, as summarize again, and I think we will be continuing on this, analyzing this case. We will be progressing, no? Number of units or in terms of ownership, you can convert the stockholders' equity or the net worth, let's say in units. They call it in shares, no? Para mas madali, mas madali. So that whenever there are, let's say, incoming stockholders or owners, you can price it, no? On a per unit, let's say, 100,000. Currently, it's 100,000, no? Last year, walang increase, no? Sa number of ownership in terms of units. So the earnings per unit, no, or per share, is actually the net income divided by 100,000. No? So on a per unit basis or per share basis, there is a loss of 1 peso and 60 centavos per share. If I own, let's say, one unit of this XYZ University, I lost $1, 1 peso and 60 centavos. Last year, on a per share, per unit basis, I earned 88 centavos per unit. Therefore, the total earnings, nothing but the product of the two, and we saw it from the income statement. It is a total loss, 160 million. cash dividend still, no? Remember this, no? Look at this, no? The XYZ University declared dividend despite the fact that it lost money. And siguro, it has been the tradition of the school on a regular basis, on an annual basis, just like any other corporation. They declare dividends, no? And nakasanayan na ng mga stockholders, nag-expect sila, no? So, that made the situation worse. Last year, it's a legitimate declaration of 22 centavos per share of the 100,000. So they declared 88 million. But here they declared 11.11 times 100,000. That's 11,000 of pesos. No, so the stock price of the school or the school value is 225. So how did you arrive at this? No, this is the net worth divided by the number of units. No, so kung itong XYZ University na to ay nakalista sa stock market. Last year, kada isang unit or share, 850. Ngayon, 225 na lang. So parang, let's say, si Jollibee Corporation, kung nag-invest kayo sa stock market, as high as, let's say, 230 pesos per share. Bumagsak siya hanggang 94 centavos noong March 19. Ngayon, naka-recover na, I think, 130 pesos per share. So, ganun yun. Ang laki ng bagsak. Kung bibili mo si Jollibee, ngayon, let's say 130 pesos times number of shares outstanding. That's the value of Tony Tan Kakpyong sa Jollibee. So, in the case of XYZ University, 225 per share. Dati-rate yung ownership ko, mumultiply ko yung 10 share ko nito, ngayon 225 na lang. So if I'm a private owner, stockholder of this XYZ University. Now the lease payments fixed at 40 million. So that was the data, no? And then the last of the four statements is the statement of net worth. Hindi pa pala. This is the third, no? Sorry. Meron pa palang statement of cash flow. Now, ito yung statement na gusto palaging tingnan ng mga owners ng school. Kasi ito lang yung regardless kung magkanong utang ng school, basta ito yung value ng school. This is the true value of the school, the net worth after paying all the debts, liabilities, no? Or deducting all the liabilities from the assets. So, you will look at it, no? Let's say, na lang to, end of the year na lang, hindi na school year, para mas madali. So, at the beginning of 2019 or end of 2018, so there we said that there are 100,000 shares amounting to 460. No? Kasi 0.46, no? 0.46 per share, beginning. And then, retained earnings, 203,760 last year, no? So where can you see the retained earnings in 2018? So, saan makikita yan? Sa balance sheet yan, and then sa stockholders' equity portion. So, tignan nga natin, ayan. Ayun, no? 203,768. Tapos, net worth ito, no? Kumita ba siya o hindi? Kumita siya ng negative, so nabawasan. Negative 160 sa nanggaling ito sa income statement. And then bukod doon, may lumabas pang perang 11,000 kasi nag-declare ng dividend. So itong 160 and 11, it's 171. So yung retained earnings from 203 naging 32,592 kasi binawasan ito. So saan makikita yan? Ayan ho, retained earnings. This is the accumulated earnings since the start of operation of XYZ University. Ayan. And then, as far as the net worth is concerned, dati yung net worth niya 663, beginning of 2019 or end of last year. Ngayon, bumagsak by this much yung worth ng eskwelahan. Or from 663, it's now down to 492, the total net worth. Ayun. 663, 492. So mapapansin nyo at this early that all of the statements in the financial statements are interconnected. Pag ginalaw mo yung isa rito, may impact sa isang statement. No? That's one of the major lessons in financial statements. All of the statements are interconnected. So a change in one item, in one particular statement, would create an impact on the other parts, on the other items of the other statements. No? We will see more later on. No? So this is as far as the net worth is concerned. Being owners of the school, I am interested in this. If you are to look at the, walang pinagkaiba doon sa mga listed stocks, Jollibee, Ayala Corporation, SM. Ito lang tinitingnan ng mga stock investor. Kung kayo gumagawa ng fundamental analysis at nag-invest kayo sa stock market, this is how to do it. Do you know that this is how the second richest man in the world is doing his investing? Do you know who he is? Very famous, no? Warren Buffett. So siya yung nag-advocate. Hindi siya technical analyst. He is not doing technical analysis. He is doing fundamental analysis. And this is what we're doing. Fundamentally, we're looking at the company. We're looking at the worth of your school. So Warren Buffett would buy this school. So Warren Buffett will buy it at 492, 592. Hindi pa yan, babaratin niya pa yan, tatawaran niya pa yan. Kasi meron siyang margin of safety pa na tinatawag. So that's his technique. And for you, that's how you do it also. That's fundamental analysis. Si Warren Buffett, they call it value investing. So they look at the value of a corporation. So this time, we're looking at the value of XYZ University. Is it worth buying? Is it worth acquiring this university? And if you are the owner of the school, are you willing to sell it at this level, at this price? No? Okay, so we will continue. Later on. So the fourth statement is the statement of cash flows. No? So when you look at cash flows, because a typical, any organization, institution would have three sets of activities. You call it operating activities and the day-to-day operation of activities. And part of the activities of the school, investing. If it has excess cash, funds, investing activities, that's portfolio management, no? And financing activities. So if you have projects that need financing, so you look at it, and in the process of doing those activities, you're doing the financing activities. So what do we expect from a statement of cash flows? These are divided into three. So XYZ universities, as far as its operating activities, being a university. So titingnan lang natin, ano yung cash na pumasok, ano yung cash na lumabas. As I said, regardless kung anong nature ng cash, importante lang, titingnan lang natin yung labas-masok ng cash. So nung kumita siya, normally when an institution earns money, cash would come in. But since nalugi siya, in effect, noong 2019, lumabas yung cash to the tune of 160. And then, ibabalik natin. Remember sa income, may diniduct tayong expense, depreciation expense, which is in reality a non-cash expense. So for us not to understate the operating activities cash flow portion, ibabalik natin yung depreciation na diniduct natin. Remember, diniduct natin yung 116 sa income statement. So hindi naman lumabas yung cash na yan eh. So balik lang natin. So and then the increase in accounts payable. May pumasok ba dyan? So nangutang, short-term borrowing. May pumasok na pera to the tune of 378. Ito yung accounts payable. Paano mo makukuha yan? Saan nakuha yan? Tignan natin yung yung balance sheet, liability portion. Yung accounts payable, lumaki. Accounts payable. Ayan. From 145 to 524, lumaki yan. There is an increase of 378. So, ganun ho yan. So, as I said, interconnected lahat ng statements, no? Increase in accruals, ganun din, from 2018 to 2019. Tignan ninyo yung dalawang columns. Yung item ng accruals, no? 353. So, may nag-accrue na dahil nangutang, no? Nangutang, pumasok ang pera. Now, in accounts receivables, yung mga hiniram na pera, naging receivable kasi yun nga, mga classrooms, no? Mga chairs na dapat mapuno ng estudyante, pumasok yung asset na yun, pero may lumabas na pera in producing those assets to the tune of 280. So, tignan nyo lang yung increase from 2018 to 2019 in accounts receivable, the difference, supposedly an increase in cash coming in. Dito sa case ng XYZ, cash went out, no? Increase in inventories, enrollment capacities, lumabas yung cash. Kasi yung inutang na pera, cash na inutang, pumasok, pero lumabas, ginastos, lumabas yung pera. Kasi ginastos. So, cash lumabas. So, as far as operations is concerned, total cash came out, 164 million. So, if you add all the positive and the negative, you end up with 164. So, bottom line, operations-wise, cash came out to the tune of 164. Now, let's look at the investing activities. Yung school, hindi naman siya nagbabuy and sell ng stocks. Hindi naman siya nag-invest sa other paper assets. Nag-invest lang siya sa real properties. So, it invested in school buildings, remember? And then, yung mga inutang niya, long-term, short-term borrowings, lumabas, 711 yung cost ng building. No, lahat ng contractor, raw materials, lumabas yung cash over a period of 1 year in 2019. Now, look at the financing activities, yung pangungutang, yung pagpapautang na ginawa ng eskwelahan. So, nangutang siya, notes payable, lumaki. So, again, the notes payable increase is just the difference between, look at your balance sheet, notes payable from 200, 2636, lumaki yan ng 436. So, ayun, 436. Pumasok yung pera, yung cash. Pero, saan ang galing? Inutang. No? Remember, this is statement of cash flow. Regardless of whether the cash came from income, from borrowing, we are not interested in that as far as statement of cash flows is concerned. No? So, the long-term debt, pumasok yung pera ng utang by issuing bonds. No? Perhaps the school issued, let's say, a 10-year bond. No? Or it borrowed 10-year loans from Land Bank or your favorite bank, no? Metro Bank. No? And then, may lumabas pang pera kasi nag-declare ng dividendo eh. Kasi tradisyon na daw na kada taon, lahat ng mga stockholders mag-receive kahit pa paanong dividendo. Kahit nalugi in that year particular. So as far as financing activities, nangutang, mas maraming inutang. Neto-neto, may pumasok na 825 million. May lumabas naman na 711 million. May lumabas na 164 million. So if you were to add the positive and the negative, you will end up with negative 5318. So that's the net decrease in cash. At the beginning of the year, your cash was, what was your cash? 57,600. Pero in 2019, lumabas after the three sets of activities, 53,18. So 57,600 minus 57,282. So that's the cash at the end of 2019. So saan nyo makikita ito? Which portion of the financial statements? No? So which financial statement and what part of that financial statement? So, di ba yan, nasa balance sheet yan, supposedly, na under assets. That's part of the current assets of the school. Remember that one, 7282. So, itong 7282, hindi lang to hinugot kung saan, no? May mga pinanggalingan ho yan, no? Pinanggaling yan sa statement of cash flow. No? So, ngayon, kung ako magiging concern, paano kung may malaking bayarin ka agad? si XYZ, yung cash niya ganitong level lang, no? So it could sound an alarm, no? That's one of the things that you as finance people, no, have to look at, no? And then, so that completed our financial statements, no? Now, you are ready to answer questions, no? So the main learning, all of the items in all of the four statements are interconnected. And all of the four statements are related to each other. One change in one item would have an impact on the other item. Okay. So again, to summarize the conclusion before the questions, the net cash from operations, negative 164, mainly because of negative earnings. Mainly because of negative income, 160 million, remember? Then the school borrowed a total of 836, 711 of which was used to construct the school building. No? And then, even after the borrowing, the cash fell by 50,318. Bumagsak ng 50,318. No? Okay, let's look at financial ratios. This is the ones that I was mentioning. Your tools, your benchmark. This will be your dashboard, no? Isang tingin nyo lang, alam nyo na kung anong nangyayari sa eskwelahan. These are indicators, no, of the financial performance of any enterprise, including schools, no? So bakit ba importante yung financial ratios, no? When you look at financial ratios, when you compute financial ratios, you're doing financial analysis. Because they are used to highlight the financial strength and weaknesses of an enterprise in general, no? Your school. Ratios, they standardize numbers and they facilitate comparisons, no? As you will see later on, no? Ano ba yung ROI mo compared sa ROI ng iba? Ano ba yung quick ratio? Now we will see that later on. Ratio comparisons should be made through time and with peers, no? This is how to do it. Hindi lang titingnan nyo ano ba yung financial ratio ng XYZ University nitong 2020 or 2019. Tignan nyo rin yung trend. How was it for the past 3 years? How was it for the past 5 years? Is the ratio improving? Is the ROI, the quick ratio improving? How is it compared to a typical school in your industry, in your sector? How is it compared to your next, competitor or yung peer ninyo? Let's say, among the private schools in your province, you're number 3, and you want to be number 2. Well, how are the ratios of the current incumbent number 2 compared to your ratios? If you're aiming to be number 2 next year or the next 3 years, no? So there are 5 categories of ratios, the indicators that I was mentioning, no? And the categories depend on the questions that they answer. So if you want to answer the question, can we make required payments? So how good are we in terms of liquefying our assets and converting them into cash? So we're talking about liquidity ratios in that case, no? So how good are we in terms of utilizing our assets in order to generate tuition fees? Are we utilizing our non-current assets like our faculty members, our buildings? Are we utilizing still the open space, renting it out to Jollibee or to other concessionaire? How are we? Meron ba tayong mga nakatenga na lupa dyan na hindi pinapaupahan? Oh, something like that. So how good are you? Because later on, the amount generated as sales or tuition fees divided by your current or fixed assets, that will be your asset management ratios later on, as you will see. So other than that, the next question, corresponding to the next category of ratios is this. What is the percentage of your assets? Total asset is being provided by the lenders or by the school owners. So that's debt management, the right mix, no? Kung tatanungin kayo kung yung total assets ninyo ay ang nagmamay-ari lang yung mga nagpautang, no? And the benchmark is, it should be, the ideal is lower. It should be lower. The debt should be lower, no? There should be a slower, smaller percentage of assets corresponding to debt, no? Now, the other family of ratios is called profitability ratios, no? How profitable are you? What is the return on equity? If I were an owner of your school, I'm interested in the ROE, return on net worth, no? Return on equity. And if I were the whole university, I look at the return, overall return of the university, not just the return from equity, but return on assets or the overall return on investment, no? Or return on invested capital. So returns, no? Market value is another family of ratios, no? So ano ba yung value ng school if you are to liquidate it right now? We saw it in the stockholders' equity portion. No? Oh, what time is it? It's already 12, no? Wow. I was so engrossed and so, yeah. So it's 12, so we will continue and we will just continue in a few. Let me take a look at it. Titignan ko kung saan tayo medyo dapat na huminto, na hindi naman yung parang hanging, no? Remember, if I were to position review it right now, we just had the background and the objective of this webinar, no? And I mentioned about the current situation, the concerns and the possible opportunities. I mentioned about what CAP is doing for you, coming up with this sustainability plan, no? Get hold of a copy of that. And then we reviewed financial statements by going through XYZ University, and we're currently doing financial analysis or analysis of financial statements. And we are now beginning by looking at the different items, different icons in our dashboard, so to speak. And we look at liquidity ratios, asset management, debt management ratios, profitability ratios, market value ratios. So this one, the last one, this market value is what is your price earnings ratio. This is what, let's say, a typical Warren Buffett investor would look at. Mahal na ba yung kumpanya? Pag mataas ang price earnings ratio, PE ratios they call it. Market to book value, alam niyo ho ba na ngayon, kung titignan ninyo, maraming kumpanya, matitibay na kumpanya, blue chips ang tawag ho doon, binibenta ngayon sa merkado, stock market. Below book value na ho. Yung iba, below 50% below book value. Kung kayo, accountant, alam niyo ho yung book value. Kumbaga, puhunan ho yun eh. Ngayon, binibenta nila 50% discount from the puhunan, no? Parang fire sale. So, as I said, if you have cash, right now, you are king because cash is king, no? Now, before I divert from the topic, no, let me say this. It's 12:15. Okay lang ho kayo, no? Gusto ko lang lumanding eh. Kasi ba ko landing? Just like any other presentation. Parang gano'n, salita, hindi naman makalanding, no? I don't think hindi naman abrupt change if I have to cut short the presentation, no? So at this point, we are here studying financial analysis, and then you will be told, you will be given this armory on how to analyze your school, no? How good are you, let's say. Ito lang, let's finish this, no? Your liquidity. How liquid is the school? That means, what is the capability of your school right now in order to tackle, to handle your current liabilities? No, how big is your current assets? O meron pa ba kayong current assets? Alam niyo yung current assets, di ba? Cash, receivables, inventories. Meron pa ba kayo niyan? Yan yung current ratio. I-divide niyo yung current assets niyo yung current liabilities. Ano itong mga current liabilities? Accounts payable, yung mga utilities and so on, no? From your balance sheet, you will see it. As a particular date, if you you get it from the balance sheet, these two items, you will have this amount for XYZ, and it's 2.34 times. So what does that mean? In the case of this school, that means that for every 1 peso of current liability, XYZ has 2.34 pesos of current assets. So is that good or bad? Is that stable or not? Now again, the answer is it depends. Now, look at the typical school, the average school. What is the typical school's current ratio? So, and for the past 3 years, this has been the current ratio of XYZ. In 2018, it was 2.3. In 2019, it's even worse, 1.20. And this year, it's 2.34. Yun nga, kinumpit natin. Pero, yung typical school daw, ang current ratio is 2.7 times. So, yung 2.34 ng XYZ is still below an average school's current ratio. So as I said, this is good enough, but it's not good enough, no? This is good, but not good enough to be above average, no? And look at the trend also. As I said, when you analyze ratios, you look at the trend. You look at it, so it's declined and then it improved. So hopefully it would improve and increase in the next year, 2021 and so on. But it should be higher than a typical school. And how is your current ratio compared to your number 2 school in your province, no? Your peer performance in terms of liquidity ratios, no? So that's how to analyze it, no? And there are other ratios, no? This is the quick ratio called the acid test, no? Accountants would know that. But this is just a preview of what to expect in the way we analyze financial statements, in the way we position our school vis-a-vis the industry, the sector, nationwide or as far than those of its competitors. We saw that from the ratios. The DSO was 45.6 and the average industry DSO was 32. So the school, the customers are paying less promptly. So you might want to address your collection policy, credit policy. No? The school may consider tightening its credit policy in order to reduce its DSO. But the question is, can you afford to do that these days? No? And the concern is really to maintain at least a certain level of enrollment for our school to be viable, at least at a break-even point, no? Something like that. No? So the elements of credit policy. Now, having mentioned about that, no, credit policy. So what are the typical decision questions, no, that you will have to answer? So when you talk about credit policy in terms of credit period, how long can you allow students to pay the tuition? Shorter period would reduce your days sales outstanding. That's good. And your accounts receivable will also decline, but it may discourage sales or enrollment. So it's a double-edged sword, no? How about in terms of cash discounts? If you offer discount, lowering price or tuition may attract new students, may reduce day sales outstanding because they can pay earlier or in cash. How about in terms of credit standards? A restrictive standards may reduce enrollment. Masyadong stricto. But will reduce bad debt naman, on the other hand. And fewer bad debts would reduce DSO. Mas mabilis. Kasi wala nang matawad eh. Hindi na makaka-enroll kung hindi nagbayad, kung may balance pa. Something like that, no? How about collection policy? How tough should you be? Would you like to have a restrictive policy which will reduce DSO but may damage customer or parent school relationship. Wala masyadong stricto. So, you know better. Alam niyo yung titimbangin ninyo yung ano ba yung inyong mission, vision. Ano ba yung, but also, you consider also your school's growth, your school's, other responsibilities and to its employees, to its teachers, no? So it's a balancing act, really.